All right, folks, this is it. Will we see a railroad worker union strike? Well, that is a very good question, and everybody wants to know the answer to. And although there are claims and statements that the strike has been and will be averted, that is still to be determined by railroad workers who still have the option to choose whether or not they want to show up or not for the companies who have agreed to, under the order and direction of the U.S. government, the Senate, and now signed into law by Biden himself, forcing these employees, these workers, to forego reasonable sick time and days off for the amount of work, effort, and energy that they put in and day out on these railroads. Now, check it out. We got it right here. Biden signs bill averting rail worker strike despite lack of paid sick days, folks. This is from CNBC directly, and it says that President Joe Biden has signed a bill into law making a rail strike illegal, preventing workers from walking off the job weeks before the holiday season. It is illegal to walk off the job. So it appears as though there would be strict consequences for those who are unhappy and unsatisfied and dissatisfied with the end result of these negotiations. Let's read on. President Joe Biden signed a bill into law making a rail strike illegal, preventing workers from walking off the job weeks before the holiday season. It says here that the bill I'm about to sign ends a difficult rail dispute and helps our nation avoid what, without a doubt, would have been an economic catastrophe at a very bad time in the calendar. This is according to Biden and what he said this morning, Friday, before signing the bill. After his administration aided in negotiations for months and the sides reached a tentative agreement in September, talks ultimately stalled and rail workers threatened a strike. Biden then asked Congress to intervene, and the Senate passed a bill yesterday, Thursday morning, making a strike illegal. The initial agreement brokered by the Biden administration was accepted by all but 4 rail unions who were holding out for guaranteed paid sick leave days. The opposing unions, though, represent the majority of rail workers. The workers and companies had until December 9 to reach an agreement before they vowed to strike, which the industry estimated would cost the U.S. economy $2 billion per day. There were also warnings and signs and headlines released that companies were already ramping up for the shutdown and the wipeout and the strike by halting rail freight a week ahead of time. Now, it says here that our nation's rail is literally the backbone of our supply chain. And this is what Biden said today, Friday. So much of what we rely on is delivered on rail, from clean water to food and gas and every other good. A rail shutdown would have devastated our economy. Without freight rail, many of our industries would have literally shut down. A strike by rail workers so close to the holiday season and in a period of high inflation could potentially raise the economy. Biden was adamant that Congress send the legislation to his desk by Saturday, tomorrow. Without an agreement, rail movement of certain goods was set to be curtailed as soon as this weekend in preparation for the strike. So fortunately, we don't have to worry about the possibility of a third of our supply chain being shut down. However, there's more to talk about as this story develops. Let's read on. Biden, at the bill signing Friday, said his economic advisors told him as many as 765,000 Americans, many of them union members themselves, would have lost their jobs. Railroad carriers begin prepping for a strike 7 days in advance, and this is according to federal safety measures. The carriers start to prioritize the securing and movement of sensitive materials such as chlorine for drinking water and other hazardous materials. 96 hours before strike date, chemicals are no longer transported. The American Chemistry Council found a drop of 1,975 carloads of chemical shipments during the week of September 10th, when the railroads stopped accepting shipments due to the previous threat of a rail strike. The four major railroads also typically move more than 80% of the agricultural freight, according to the National Grain and Feed Association. So Congress has the authority to regulate interstate commerce under Article 1, Section 8, and this is of the Constitution. And the Supreme Court has ruled it can use that authority to intervene in disputes by rail labor and that have the potential to affect trade across state lines. A nearly century-old law, the Railway Labor Act of 1926, gives the president the authority to intervene as well in situations where a rail strike could significantly affect essential transportation. The act has been invoked 18 times since it was signed into law. The House on Wednesday approved a separate measure that would have added 7 days of paid sick leave to the contract instead of just one. Though it had bipartisan support in both chambers, that measure was defeated in the Senate vote. Biden, at the bill signing, thanked Congress for acting so quickly, even though he acknowledged it wasn't an easy vote. Biden said, "I know this was a tough vote for the members of both parties. It was a tough vote for me, but it was the right thing to do at the moment to save jobs, to protect millions of working families from harm and disruption, and to keep the supply chain stable around the holidays." So basically, Biden is saying, in my opinion, that it was a tough vote, but screw you guys. You guys are essentially the casualties of this war. And, you know, your lack of ability to take sick time, it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. How hard would it have been for them to pass 7 days of sick time and keep this thing going in comparison to not and just signing the bill over? Like, what is the actual difference? Do you think that if you did that tomorrow immediately everybody would take 7 days off and not come to work? I highly doubt that would be the case. Now, this says a lot about Biden and what he thinks about the American people, particularly those that he screwed over in this signing of this bill. But it also says a lot about how much control you have and or lack thereof that is clearly visible and seen here as these union workers are basically kind of given the short straw, the raw end of the deal, despite having the ability to negotiate their working conditions. Perhaps maybe it's not as good as you might once thought the union was. The situation put, quote unquote, Union Joe Biden in a difficult position. Biden said Thursday that he supports unions as much as ever, but as president of the United States, rather than a single senator from Delaware, it was his job to look out for all Americans. He said has long been a proponent of paid sick leave and will still work to make it a right for all workers, not just rail workers. Think about this, guys. Think about this, folks. Biden, president of the United States, quote unquote, cares about the American people and is doing this for the Railroad Workers Union. He's sending almost $100 billion to Ukraine, but he can't figure out a way to scrounge up a couple bucks to stipend the 7-day sick leave that the Railroad Workers Union is requesting. Are you serious? Are you kidding me? It says the initial agreement brokered by the White House would give rail workers a 24% pay increase over 5 years from 2020 to 2024, immediate payouts averaging $11,000 upon ratification. And this is under the agreement. Workers would receive one extra paid day off and the promise they could attend medical appointments without penalty. And this is retroactive because they haven't received any pay increases for the last several years. But you got to think, this is just like how you pay your taxes, which is why I prefer not to be a W-2 employee. I prefer to calculate my taxes and pay them when they're due versus paying them ahead of time, overpaying them and expecting to get a refund. Why? Because the government then has your money and they're going to use it however they see fit. Hopefully you can get it back. But it's no different than this situation with these railroad workers union companies like, the Union Pacifics and the Norfolk Southerns and the CSXs and, of course, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway BNSF. These folks took this money that they've never given these employees over the last, several years that was rightfully theirs, and they should have received these pay increases. And guess what they did? They took that money, they invested it in the market, and now they brought back these tremendous returns on someone else's dime. that now they're saying, oh, okay, we'll give it back to you retroactively, but they've already made the money on your money. This is investing for beginners, folks. If you guys want to know more, let me know and we can talk about it. Now, it says here that the workers, though, balked at the lack of paid sick leave because under the agreement, they would have to use unpaid time off for medical appointments. Biden on Friday acknowledged his disappointment that paid sick leave was not included in the agreement. It's like you would think as a company, you would want to do all you could to encourage the health of your employees that help the company continuously work, produce revenues, and ungodly profits. Come on, folks. Now, it says here that Biden said, look, I know this bill doesn't have paid sick leave that these workers, frankly, every worker in America deserves, but that fight isn't over. Biden said, I didn't commit we were going to stop that just because we couldn't get it into this bill, that we were going to stop fighting for it. I supported paid sick leave for a long time, and I'm going to continue that fight until we succeed. Much like he's probably going to try to continue the fight of getting these student loan debts forgiven, although technically he can't do that. So these are kind of like, these are empty promises, folks. Union leaders told CNBC they would remember who signed against them in upcoming elections. Union support was critical to forming Biden's ultimately winning coalition in the 2020 election. Well, this may have just sealed his fate for 2024. We can only hope. Now, it says that Tony Cardwell, president of the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division, said, our membership is going to support whoever stands with them. And he said that it's looking like the Democrats are standing with our members and making sure that our members get sick leave. If that's the case, we will. If Republicans are bold enough to step out, stand with labor, stand with the blue collar workers, and vote with our members, then it's likely that they can gain votes as well. I don't know if I would consider this standing with you. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like that old saying, if somebody always owes you, you'll never be broke. Well, guess what? You don't have the money and you need it today. You don't have the sick time and you need to go to the doctor. What are you going to do? The provision to add 7 days of paid sick leave failed in the Senate in a 52-43 vote. All Democrats present to vote supported it except for Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, and 6 Republicans also backed the measure. And in the House, 3 GOP representatives joined with all Democrats to pass the sick leave proposal. Folks, this is where we're at today. Biden signs bill averting rail workers strike despite lack of paid sick days. To me, this is a slap in the face. I am glad that we are not potentially going to see the railroad shut down. However, I am not happy that the workers got screwed in the deal. And I do not trust, nor do I believe that any formidable measures actually going to be taken beyond this point to help fight to get them the sick leave and sick time that they truly deserve. Now, with that being said, I understand that it's illegal to go on strike, but I don't think it's illegal to resign. So perhaps maybe we will see more of these Fed-induced job cuts across America happening from not just companies laying off employees, but perhaps maybe even employees themselves resigning and choosing to walk out. Only time will tell. We will see. And I will continue to bring you guys updates as that information comes about. You guys take care. Be safe. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.